to remember our dearly departed. Shown here are members who have passed in the last year and those from your lives that you've come and shared mementos and photos in the altar in the back under the clock. So let me repeat a line from Du Bois's Hymn to the Peoples to start us off. Here in the white silence of the dawn, before the womb of time, with bowed hearts, all flame and shame, we face the birth pangs of a world. Du Bois's vision, standing in the world we have known, we face the birth pangs of a world trying to be born. We perceive the veil between those two worlds stirring. Many ancient peoples believed there were times when the veil between the worlds and the living and the dead grew thin. The time between late autumn and the onset of winter is the most common time cited for the thinning of the veil. The ancient Celts called this time Samhain, and they would go to grave sites or to the places their beloved died with favorite food and drink of their dearly departed. They would set hay bales on fire to light their way. And in those days, it's important to remember it was not safe to be out late in the dark night. There were no street lights, there were no police. It was a big deal for everyone to come out all night and honor their ancestors. The hope was, by setting out their favorite foods, lighting their way, staying up all night, one might catch a glimpse, a sound, a perception, some message from one's departed loved ones. The Catholic Church adapted these traditions, creating All Saints' Day for November 1st, that day after Samhain. They renamed Samhain All Hallows' Eve. All Souls' Day, November 2nd, was added later, extending the festival to include not just the saints, but all who have passed. And so our altar in the back as well. Indeed, All Souls' Day is a major Universalist holiday, since Universalists believed all souls would be saved. But most folks today, they no longer have regular practices of courting messages from their beloved dead. Indeed, some might think it a little odd to stay awake all night and cold, hoping to catch a message from our ancestors. We might think we have more modern notions of what happens when we die. Some may not believe we receive anything with such rituals. But I wonder, when was the last time any of us decided to stay up through the autumn night, staying awake and attentive to see what might happen? Perhaps it's because we think we're modern. Perhaps it scares us to approach the veil of death. We know that love is required to keep that veil thin, as the old tales say. And what if we were to perceive something? Might it not encumber us to pay attention and do something with the message? It would call us into relationship and accountability. We, as a community, have developed ways to honor our beloved dead, and we still wonder what to make of the veil. We approach the veil with rituals honoring our dearly departed, as we did today. Yet, perhaps most important is for us to ask, how do we honor our beloved departed? What veils are we approaching? I will return to those questions in a bit. But first, it seems that our world has come to a point where a new world might be groaning to be born. We, witnessing this stirring, might best remember that we are potentially world builders. That if we have the power, we can choose the world we want to live in. Whatever comes into being could be a product of our will, our attention and effort, and reflect our values. But without power, the world we hope to create might have to wait. So let us examine what we mean by the term world. The Oxford English Dictionary has far too many meanings of the word world for me to share this morning. But it does share these. World as the earth, together with all of its countries and peoples and natural features. World can refer to a group of people such as the English-speaking world. Another planet like the earth is another meaning. But these don't really suit our theme this morning. The term world can also refer to secular interests and affairs. As in the common Christian phrase, we are in this world but not of this world. Meaning that we have values different than those that prevail on the streets. Values tempered by faith, by deeper, more abiding truth. This gets us closer to our task today. Another helpful meaning is world as a period of history, as in the world of the ancient Roman Empire. So let us dig deeper into that lens. Dearly beloved, does it not seem a period of history may be ending? A set of principles changing. New ones yearning to take their place. This doesn't mean that the truth will be transformed. It doesn't mean we will have to embrace these new values. But it appears today that worlds are colliding. Certain presumptions and values called into question, and a new set of principles might soon inform the world that we inhabit. Principles and values that may not be ours. You see, colliding worlds bring chaos, uncertainty, and even unrest. 17th century mathematician Gottfried Leibniz sought to prove the existence of God using logic. He called this the best of all possible worlds. He wrestled with the question of why do bad things happen to good people? And his answer, that we are fully responsible for our own misery. Without accounting for natural disasters, oppressive systems, the unchecked power of bullies and tyrants, or the whims of the marketplace, Leibniz coined the term the best of all possible worlds in an attempt to prove the existence of God. He claimed that if God is good and omnipotent, then the world must be the best of all possible worlds because God doesn't make mistakes. We've heard this theology in other places. But this is a common trope that is neither logically consistent nor socially useful. Both Soren Kierkegaard, the theologian, and Bertrand Russell, the philosopher, famously shredded the logic behind Leibniz's assertion. And then Voltaire, the famous French writer, wrote the novel Candide, where he scathingly dismantles the folly and delusion behind this assertion that we have the best of all possible worlds. Voltaire reveals the damage done to humanity and culture by adopting a worldview that claims whatever horror and misery exists are part of some divine plan. Voltaire reveals that Leibniz's theology is a tool of class exploitation, oppression, and downright lazy thinking. And because of its direct refutation of the Enlightenment ideals about class, race, religion, and even disease, Candide was banned. Voltaire exploded Leibniz's world. But Voltaire had his own stuff. Despite his soaring intellect, Voltaire, like all of us, was someone embedded in the values of his time. And of these, I lift up most notably his virulent anti-Semitism. Now, Voltaire denounced arguments against Jews because of their religion, because he didn't really believe in any religion. But he created arguments against Jews that focused on them as a people, as a race. And these racialized values lived on through the Enlightenment into the 20th century, informing Hitler's Nazi Party, and they live on in white nationalism being touted in the United States today, sadly often by people with political power. If Voltaire, the great intellect, could not free himself of all the errors of his age, my guess is we may not be able to rid ourselves of all of our own errors. And this is why times like ours, when worlds are in collision and a new world seems to be yearning to be born, we're called to summon courage, to let go of all we can, to hold on to what we must, what is right, and to affirm what heals and what promotes love and justice. A world is a series of understandings of how we choose to live. It's the fabric of the underlying values upon which we base our relationships. Composing a world includes deciding who is a friend or foe, who will be given access and rights, who will be protected, who will be shunned, who is legitimate, who is suspect. So if a period of history is transforming right now around us, if one world is being born and another fading away, what might those worlds be? We have seen grumblings of a world being lauded by some folks stomping on stages at rallies across our nation, have we not? Using stark words, ideas and tropes that inspire violent deeds. We have seen the deepening embrace of a world that holds fear aloft as a primary value. A world where othering fellow human beings is exalted and rewarded, all in vain attempts to gain power. A world where we see people cheer as their leaders claim it is okay to deem entire classes of human beings less than or illegal, whether they're LGBTQ or not white, or they pray a different way, or they were born in a different part of the planet. A world where we see crowds of armed, angry followers cheer threats of violence and parade about some phony notion of strength. One that requires dividing the human family while scapegoating disadvantaged, scared, and oppressed people yearning to be free. But this world, it's not new, is it? It's the same old demagoguery and violent dominionism dressed up in new clothes, shared on new media. That world is still wrong. It is still evil, and sadly it appeals to many of our fellow citizens whose moral reasoning is deficient, whose compassion they think it is okay to ration only for themselves and people like them. This does seem different for the United States, but we have seen this here before. Whether it was slavery or our own embrace of anti-Semitism and other forms of hatred. During the early days of the Second World War, German Nazi rallies packed Madison Square Garden and other arenas like that around this nation. The most popular radio host at the time was a virulent anti-Semite known as Father Coughlin. But what makes today's infamy different is that in 1939, the president and federal government did what they could to not amplify or reward those voices of hatred. And what breaks my heart and sets my soul ablaze is that today, those misleading us from our highest offices are the ones encouraging, rewarding, and retweeting this evil. Because it is evil. Let us not be afraid to call it out. Hordes of folks are applauding them. This is what is new. I have never been more concerned for the future of our country. But lovely people, there is hope. We see the stirrings all across this country. Hope because we rise together and resist in love. Hope because we know there is a better world that we can help fashion. By contrast, the world that we cherish affirms life and dignity. Our world honors and courts diversity as a primary goal of the human project. Our world cares not whom you love or how you pray. Our world says that scared, hungry people desperately seeking a new life are not an invasion. They are an opportunity for us to provide healing and shelter and to meet the holy anew, face to face. Our worldview claims that to meet a caravan of hope with bayonets of brutality is nothing short of evil stalking for innocent victims, all for the mere fleeting political moment. These acts sow tools of destruction, and I fear we have passed the point where it is no longer just the ringleaders to blame. Those who place race-baiting populates into power have much to answer for. A truly strong man, where I grew up, doesn't need to place children in cages or send refugees home for certain misery or death. We are witnessing outrages many of us thought we would never see. Worlds are indeed in collision. And we are doing things about it. We're organizing. We are speaking the truth when it is denied. We are helping to get out the vote. We are showing up and placing our bodies on the line when our minority neighbors are threatened. This is holy work. We have great toil ahead of us to change the hearts and minds of those who believe this dance with nationalism gives them something. But tens of millions of people were slaughtered as nations ravaged one another across the globe throughout the 20th century in the name of nationalism. We learned those lessons. We changed our worldviews so it might not happen again. but we're witnessing in a short breadth of time a demagogue reality show that seems to have dismantled a few bits of those checks and balances against such savagery. And for what? There's no economic, strategic, national interest or concern. It is merely a lust for fame and power and aggrandizement. Our world claims that racists and fascists and sexists and homophobes do not belong in any place of power or public service. Our worldview shouts from the mountaintops any call to do damage to an entire class of humanity is devilish and shall be resisted. Let me share this lesson from my favorite imam. I was having a spiritual moment leading up to the 2016 election. We had shown up for about the 5th time in 2 weeks because his community was under attack, rhetorical and otherwise. And Johari Abdul Malik, my brother in Islam, shared Surat 49 from the Holy Quran. And in this passage, it says that the Almighty made us all different so we could do the difficult work of learning one another. And the insinuation is that the Almighty could have done whatever it wanted. It could have made us all the same color. It could have made us all pray the same and love the same kind of people. But it didn't. And it's by design. Because we are put on this earth, according to this passage, to do the most difficult work of getting over our own stuff, realizing that our way of being and living, the way we're built and the way we pray is not normal, whatever that means, and to go out of our way to court the widest diversity we can so we can be increased by learning about those people, and thereby bring them into our circle of protection. And as much as one is not doing that work of seeking out those who are different from them, to learn from them, to honor their divinity within, then their work is yet to begin. Another world groans to be born amidst all of this. And the world trying to stretch through that veil right now can be influenced by you and I. A world aligned with the best that humanity has ever dreamed. And we are called to come to an ardent and vigilant defense of truth in those who are threatened. We are world builders. So let us show up for our shifts and work overtime. Bring your gloves and your boots and your hard hats. And let's build the best world we possibly can. And along the way, we will need to find, train, nurture, and reward leaders who will guide our way. Let's call them our new saints. Self-differentiated leaders who will remember that the ends never justify the means. Saints who will lead us into a time of deeper compassion and fashion justice that is not cruel, but knows that we are safer when we're more reasonable, more empathetic, when we are fair and resolved to do the difficult work of inviting people from the margins to come into our circle, to protect them and love them and feed their families. Will you join me as we go to work? Will you join me, people? Yeah. Let us lay it on the line to make sure America does not devolve into militarism or ethnic violence. Let us honor saints who will build the world. Du Bois exalted when he wrote these words: "Save us, world spirit, from our lesser selves. Grant us that war and hatred cease. Reveal our souls in every race and you, and help us, O human God, in this thy truce, to make humanity divine. Thank you. We're going to honor this with an amazing rendition. Saints go marching in.